Hello everybody and welcome back to Big Dan's channel. I am of course as always Big Dan, and today I'm doing something a little bit different, as you have probably read from the title. So today what I'm going to be doing is all of the film reviews that I've done earlier this year on this channel, and for some films that I watched at the cinema where I never reviewed them, I'm going to be ranking them all based on from worst to best. So and another little thing to know is that not all of these films were ones I watched in the cinema. It's just if I had a cinema release and maybe I watched them later at home on like Netflix or something, then I'll still be doing a review for them. So with that, let's get started. One last thing as well. If it was one where I just watched it at home, it'll have this little symbol above it on the film poster or something like that, just to show you that it wasn't one that I watched in the cinema, though there is only about 4 or 5 of those, so there's not many on this list. Right, so with that, let's crack on. Right, so first off, we'll have one that I watched at home, actually, funnily enough. At the very bottom of the list, number 35, we have The Enforcer. Now, this isn't to say The Enforcer's a bad film. It's just that it was a little bit below average, so give or take like a 4 out of 10. So again, not like bad, it was just that average films tend to be better than this. It had some decent action, and you could see the effort in Antonio Banderas' performance, at least in my opinion. But to be honest, the story was just very, very generic, and I found some pacing issues with it, and as well as with its villains and that just weren't that interesting really, and they just didn't feel like they had much presence in the film. Number 34, we have Some Other Hood. Now, I know this is meant to be a sequel to a film from like 12 years ago or something like that. Thankfully, I can give it credit that it was a standalone one, and you didn't really need to watch anything different or out like that to be able to understand this, and it was quite funny, and I could appreciate the quick pace of it to just sort of get it over and done with. But it was quite terribly made, if I'm going to be honest. There was next to no production value, and the script and just overall story was very basic, and yeah, it just was not great. And the fact that there was only 2 other people in the cinema when I went to see this, I think shows how unpopular this film is. Next up, at number 33, we have Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, I know a lot of people hated this one or said it was positive. I have a friend who really likes this film. They'll know they'll know exactly who they are. I just found it a disappointment. I've described it to friends as being average at very, very best. And it was just a terrible story, and it was definitely badly adapted compared to the game. Though I can at least say the cameos such as MatPat were quite nice, and the animatronic design was absolutely flawless, and that was definitely what carried it for us. And it did make it average for us, even though it was a disappointment really. Number 32, we have Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. This is just a prime example of mid-Marvel, if I'm going to be completely honest. It was better than Love and Thunder, I can give it that, because this at least knew how to blend perfectly between the serious and goofy. But yeah, it was just very mid. I remember people have described it as being kind of like a 2-hour-long Rick and Morty episode, and I can very much see where they're coming from, because the visual effects did remind us of that a lot when I was watching it. Still, it was acceptable, I suppose. It was just another one for Phase 4, really, of just being mid. But there is another Marvel film later up this list, which I think is, without a doubt, far superior to this. 31, we'll have Ryland. Now, I know this is probably going to be an unpopular position for Ryland to land in. I understand a lot of people absolutely adored this film, and you know what, I did enjoy it, and I did think it was decent. It's just that I would not give it like an 8 or 9 out of 10 like some people were. And I could appreciate the humour and like the upbeat, colourful nature of the film. It's just that after a while, even though it is a bit of a shorter one, I did feel it sort of draining on us a bit, the running length of it. Which, as I said, you know, if it's a shorter film and that's happening, it's not always really that much of a good sign. But yeah, still, it is a decent film to watch. I would definitely say it's worth a watch. I think one of the main sticking points for me as well was just sort of the dialects and that, because I'm not from London, so some of them were catching us out a little bit. But hey, that might just be a me problem. If you're from London, you'll probably enjoy this film more. Number 30, we'll have Dumb Money. Now, this one is one that I went, there wasn't many people in the screen for this. I think there was only I only counted like 5 other people in the screen. Though to be fair, it was like middle of a Tuesday or something, so it's not really a commentary on the film, that I would say. Though I don't think this has a massive amount of viewership, this one. I thought it was a decent story about capitalism, and I thought it had quite a solid ending and quite a solid, likeable protagonist, portrayed by Paul Dano quite well, and I did think that was decent. But my problems with it was just the soundtrack was absolutely dreadful and one of the worst I've easily heard in a long time. And there was just a lack of focus on GameStop itself within the story. Like, as I think I mentioned in my review, you could easily have just made it about any other like brand or something like that and you would have had no problems whatsoever. 29, we'll have Napoleon. This is another one, again, I know this is becoming a trend now, I am nearly out of this, where it definitely could have been a better film. It was okay and I did kind of enjoy it. The battle scenes though were definitely what carried it. Well, I think I already did my review for this, so you know some of me positives and negatives, but I'll just go over it in case you're someone new with this. The battle scenes definitely carried it and they were very raw like they should be, and the scale of them was massively pushed my score. But it was definitely let down by Joaquin Phoenix. He was decent, but his performance was definitely nothing compared to when he was in Joker, and he did feel very miscast and just looked nothing like Napoleon. And the pacing as well, the first half was blitzing by, the second half dragged so much to the point that I was practically flat in my seat just wanting it to be over. 28, we have Cocaine Bear. This is probably the start of those where they're getting towards the better side. It was an incredibly funny film with a kind of turn your brain off mentality, you know, the kind I'm on about. And it was genuinely decent. The only problems I had with it though was just there was far too many characters, some of which had absolutely like no effect on the plot. For example, some that are introduced in the opening just they do absolutely nothing in the entire film and they may as well have not existed. And the bear, the amount of screen time it had, it probably should have been higher. Still though, it was decent and I would still say it is worth a watch just if you want something to laugh at. In number 27, and this is getting into the like properly better ones now, these are all 7 out of 10 and above for me. Number 27, we have The Meg 2, The Trench. Again, this is another kind of turn your brain off type of film. Statham's performance here was solid and definitely the best out of the lot. It was alright throughout though, there were some big chunks that dragged. And it was definitely the third act was the best part, when it was like what the whole film should have been rather than just like that part. The third act is sort of like what the first one was throughout pretty much. Still, good film. Turn your brain off, just a dumb fun kind of one. And definitely one that I would say is worth a watch as if you have the time and facilities for it. Number 26, we have How to Blow Up a Pipeline. This is another one that I watched at home. It is quite well paced and edited to give some nice character development, which I could really appreciate, and this massively pushed my score for it. And I could understand where they were coming from, but the problem I had with it was just the morals behind it. Even trying to, I still couldn't really align with the characters and what they were doing. And there is a line about like Jesus apparently in his time being a terrorist, and I don't go into my religion much, but I am, albeit not devout, I am a Christian, and that one didn't really sit right with us, to be honest, and that did lose points for us, to be honest, because there's like, you know you're going to be having a Christian audience, so you probably shouldn't include something like that, because it's just not going to get you very high reviews. But still, decent, worth a watch. It has got some decent tension behind it, and I did enjoy it overall. Number 25, we have Air. It is a good true story, I would say. The first half is confusing, but the second half brings it back. And I found the soundtrack to be quite decent, and I thought the story was quite inspirational, especially since it was a true one, and it did make us feel inspired before the second film of the night, which I will be getting around to soon. Number 24, we have Talk to Me. It is weaker than recent horrors such as Barbarian in my opinion, so I disagree with Peter Jackson claiming it is the best horror in years apparently, because as I said, I thought Barbarian from last year was better. And it does have some dislikable characters, I'll admit. I just was not a fan of some of them. But I did think the premise was quite interesting and different to what you get from most horror films these days, of just sort of a similar formula. And it did have some nice differences to it, which helped push me score to about 3.5 stars rather than just 2.5 or 3. And I did think it utilised its horror elements quite well, because there was a fair amount of bits that took us by surprise and that, and this was quite a good one to watch, I would say. And it was also a home watch, so maybe that might have lowered my score a bit because I didn't have the full immersion of the cinema, but Who knows? Number 23, we have Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. It left us confused in places, and I was ready to see the credits by the end of it because I felt like it overstayed its welcome a bit. But it was definitely a welcome return to see Vanessa Kirby back because I thought she was one of the stronger characters out of the previous few films. And it has got some decent action scenes and a story that made me agree to see the final film with the friend who I went with because he was giving it like a 9 out of 10 or something like that. Shout out Kane. But yeah, I definitely will watch the last one after this. It has won me trust back a bit and I do think it is one of the better ones out of the series. Number 22, we have Gran Turismo. It was as predictable, was one of my main sticking points with this one. Part of that is down to its marketing, I'll admit, rather than just sort of like the film itself. And it is a bit too slow for comfort in places, and yeah, again, I was ready to see the end of it, but it did have some very good video game visuals, sort of like to create immersion with Jan, and the music and the editing were quite nice, and I thought they were well done, and it pushed me score up more. The end of it as well, the end of it gives you a bit of exposition about Jan in real life, and I thought that was a quite nice addition to put on the end of the film, just to tell you a little bit more about him and all that. And I will admit, from what they told you, they did get it quite accurate, so I can give them points for that as well, unlike Napoleon. But yeah. Number 21, we have Asteroid City. It was acceptable, and it was a clear like Wes Anderson film through a lot of his auteur traits coming through. Though this is definitely my least favourite out of the films he's done that I've seen, because I think this will be the third film I've watched from him now, because I've seen Fantastic Mr. Fox and Isle of Dogs, so this actually is also the first live action film I've seen from him. As I said, it was decent, but my problems with it was just the editing, because they kept putting these like Act 2 things on the screen and stuff like that, like telling you what act and what scene it is, and it just did cause you to lose immersion, even though I could see what they were trying to do. Still, decent watch really. Number 20, Knock at the Cabin, and from this point as well, this is where we get into the properly good ones, where all of these from this point onwards have 4 stars and above. Knock at the Cabin, it was a great commentary on the world's problems in my opinion. With that I could read quite easily. They didn't even have to tell us that. They presented it quite easy to follow. And it had solid suspense throughout it, and I thought there was some decent tension built up. I think this might have also been my first film of the year. Well, it's either this or another one, which is further up this list. But anyway, and yeah, it was quite good and I enjoyed it. But my only flaws with it was just there wasn't much exposition given about sort of a lot of stuff. And it felt a little bit like lazy writing in that aspect, rather than just trying to create a mystery. Because I even remember before I went to see it, I said, if they don't tell you, it probably will lower my score, but which it has. Even so, great watch. I know a lot of people will probably disagree with us on that, but what can I say? I just thought this was quite a solid way to start the year. Number 19, we have Are You There, God? It Is Me, Margaret. A surprisingly solid commentary on religion for me. I did not expect that going into it. I mean, it had some good humour, though I will admit there was some forced attempts for it to try to be like relatable to a younger audience. But even so, I still found it quite enjoyable, and it was still a good watch overall. And yeah, it was decent. Had some nice humour, and I mean, if some people claim this is like a girls' film, which like what even is? Like, you know, you cannot really say that kind of thing. I mean, come on. But yeah, it was like going into it as if I as a man can enjoy this, which is supposedly a girls' film, then I mean, I think you can say it has done the job well. Number 18, we have The Great Escaper. It was an incredibly sweet film, I would say. It was more that it was sweet rather than like well made, but that's why it gets the 4 stars from us, is because it did so well at being so sweet. And it had a mostly good pace. There was 1 or 2 scenes that I thought were dragged out a little bit, but even so I still thought it went at about the right pace, and I never felt particularly bored or anything like that. And it did almost make me cry several times, yes, which is a challenge when it comes to films, trust me. Number 17, we'll have another one that I've reviewed on this channel before, in The Creator. I described this one as being sort of a Blade Runner for the modern day, because it does, when I was watching it, I did notice a lot of similarities between this and Blade Runner, and it did also probably help that I was doing my A-levels at the time, and Blade Runner is one of them that you study on the film course I did. So, you know, I can easily think back to the stuff I'd been studying at the time. And it had a great ending and character arc, and I thought the character arc was most comparable to the video game The Last of Us, because it was genuinely quite solid and I could see a lot of parallels between it. At number 16, we have the Super Mario Brothers movie. I thought it was a great video game adaptation. It is probably the best video game adaptation I've watched this year. Yeah, actually one of the best ever. It was definitely, I've never watched it, but from what I've heard, I assume this is vastly superior to the live action one from the 1990s. And it did have a weak story, I'll admit, compared to what it was based off, but it did have a plethora of references, and that was massively what pulled it back. And this is definitely one worth a watch, because honestly, this might very well be the fastest paced film I've watched this year. There was not a single scene where I was bored during it. Number 15, we have Saltburn. This is easily the most disturbing film that I watched at the cinema this year. There's absolutely nothing even remotely disturbing compared to this. I kid you not, the groans of disgust from the whole collective as a cinema when people were watching this alongside us, it was just, yeah, when it comes to a cinematic experience, this is easily one of the best of this year that I've had. It was just so disturbing. Yeah, can we move on from this one, please? Number 14, we have Joyride. I went to see this with a friend as well. This was an incredibly funny one. I have not died laughing at a film like this in a long time. And the ending as well was so emotional. Like, you have this massive chunk of just hilarity and then this tiny bit that's like an emotional driving force at the end. That was something I could really appreciate, how it at least ended with something really meaningful rather than just trying to continue being goofy. And the only thing that let it down really was the fact that I'd had some unrealistic situations, as you do in a lot of sort of comedy and stuff like that. But in all honesty, I could easily forgive it for the fact that it was that hilarious. So, number 13, we have Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Now, I know a lot of people who are my friends who said that were not a fan of this film. In all honesty, I actually thought it was quite solid. The original trilogy is definitely better, do not get me wrong on that. But it was at least better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which in all honesty I actually do not think is that bad. In all honesty, I thought it was a very fitting way to finish with this character, which is why I got such a high score from, as I thought it was a very nice way to have the last final Indiana Jones film. And honestly, please, after this, just do not touch this series anymore. Can we just leave it at these 5 films, please? Please, please. Number 12, we have Wonka. Now, this is the one that I went to see yesterday. This is also, obviously for that reason, my last film of the year at the cinema. It was a perfect release for Christmas time. The tone of it fits so well with this sort of season of, you know, joy and celebration that we all know Christmas to be. Great humour. Like, for a children's film, if I'm dying laughing at it, then you have done something very, very right. And this is the kind of children's films that I love, as well. You can still appreciate and enjoy watching them as an adult. And the ending of it as well had me so close to tears. Like, when I say that, like, it was such an emotional driving force. Honestly, I wasn't even sure if I should have gave it an 8 up until the ending came on. I was like, you know what, no, it is getting an 8 when I saw that. Yeah. If you can nearly make me cry, you have done something very, very right in your film. Number 11, we have Missing. My only flaw with it really is that it was quite predictable in places, to be completely honest with you. There was just, you could easily tell what was going to happen quite early on in some scenes, but that was the only real problem I had with the thing. There was some great tension and a great character called Javier, who was one of the sort of supporting ones. He was really likeable, and I thought he was quite well portrayed, and kind of like this sweet character who's actually even more likeable than the protagonist. I did watch Searching earlier this year, obviously not at the cinema, just at home, because I never watched it when it came out. I just remember seeing a trailer for it at the cinema, and that was the closest that I ever came to it. I thought this was definitely better than it. I just thought it was less predictable, and I just thought it moved at a bit of a better pace and everything, whereas Searching, I enjoyed it, but I just thought it was alright and a little bit slow. But yeah, this was definitely the better of the two, and as well, you can easily watch this without watching Searching. It's a sequel, but it's a standalone one very much, though there are still some nice references to the original film if you have seen that one, which pushed me score up a bit. Number 10, we have The Old Oak. This was an incredibly emotive one. Some of my friends from university who watched this with me thought it was just alright but decent. I thought it was brilliant. I will admit there was flaws. For example, the ending could have been a bit better, and there was some storylines where they bring them up and just never like round them off or bring them to a proper conclusion. But that was the only real flaws I had for it. It was so emotive, the performances were solid, and considering that these are, you know, unprofessional actors as Ken Loach always uses, it was impressive, that factor. And it was a worthy final film for Loach as well, and you want us to be honest, this one did break us, and it may not have brought us to tears, but I was very close, and this had me thinking about it the entire night after I seen it. Like, I could not get this film out of my head. It was just so much. It was so hard. It was so hard to watch some of the scenes of this thing. I kid you not. Yeah, as much as it's a brilliant film, there might be some bits where you might just say, you know what, I have to skip this because I cannot. It was very, very hard to watch, and honestly, a lot of the time when I was watching it, it actually made me think back to This Is England. Just in a lot of scenes from it, it was that strong. It genuinely, yeah, I want to move on from this one, sorry. I don't want to think about it. Number 9, we have Anatomy of a Fall. It was a very strong film with some great performances all around, and I did thoroughly enjoy it, though I will admit one of my only flaws for the film, bar pacing a little bit, was just the fact that by the end you never found out, you never actually get the answer to the question you want to know the entire time. If you watch it, you will know exactly what I mean. Number 8, we'll have Killers of the Flower Moon. This was definitely Leonardo DiCaprio's best performance, at least in my opinion. Lily Gladstone, she was a stellar supporting actor for him, and it made it feel like nowhere near the film's actual runtime, because I remember saying this is the longest film I've ever watched in the cinema, and it honestly did not even feel close to that runtime with how much engagement there was with this film and their stellar performances. You would not think this film is nearly 3.5 hours long. I will admit it, not a masterpiece though, I'm sorry. It was close to a 10. It was very, very close, but it's not a masterpiece, I'm sorry. Just when I think of other stuff where I describe them as masterpieces, I think, okay, yes, it is a very, very good film, but it's just not a 10 out of 10. I will say about it though, if you're someone who cannot handle even a tiny bit of racism in like a film, this is definitely one to avoid. Like, I have seen worse films for it, like This Is England is definitely stronger when it comes to its racist tones, but this one, it's kind of like the stuff you'd expect for the time it portrays, but yeah, just if you don't like racism in any form in a film, definitely skip it. Number 7, we have The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. This is obviously another one that I reviewed on the channel. It is my second favourite film in the series now after Catching Fire. It has passed the original one for us now. I thought this was better. And honestly, it just left me wanting more prequels like this for this series. And I was just thinking, oh, like some examples. Haymitch's Hunger Games, do a prequel for that. You know, something like that I would appreciate. Or even something like the very first Hunger Games, like that would be a good one to look at, because it would show you like how this first started off, and if the differences between like early on and the later ones, like Katniss's games and things like that. Yeah, just my opinion on the subject, but honestly, I think that can be taken quite positively, you know, if I'm saying I want more of this kind of stuff. And Francis Lawrence as director has definitely pulled back for us now from Mockingjay Part 1 and 2. Not that I dislike those films, it's just that I thought they were all right and nowhere near the scale of the original and Catching Fire, but yeah, this has definitely pulled it back to Catching Fire now. Number 6, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. This is arguably the best film of the trilogy for me. It was so emotive. I have next to nothing negative to say about this film. It is still a 9, I'll admit, but it is easily the best film of Phase 4. James Gunn has definitely saved Phase 4 with this. It is the standout film, and if there is one that's the best of Marvel's Phase 4, it is easily this. When I mentioned earlier that there was another Marvel film, well, yeah, you have it, because this is definitely superior Quantumania, like, I'm sorry. But number 5, we have Barbie. This is another 9 out of 10 for us. Some of you will probably want to rip my throat out for not giving it a 10. Look, I did very, very thoroughly enjoy this. I just could not bring myself to give it a 10 after my first watch, and even on rewatch. it's very, very close, and it is probably the closest 10 I will ever give something in my life. But yeah, no. But it is the most rewatchable and just fun film of the year that had me and the two guys I went with. We were all dying laughing. And honestly, it's like themes of feminism and that. Its themes of feminism is so strong, and it encapsulates it perfectly. And yeah, I couldn't help but love this film. I have it on Blu-ray now because, well, actually there it is, because it is just a brilliant film, and honestly, Greta Gerwig has definitely earned my respect for this one. It exceeded my expectations by like 10 miles, and I don't think I've ever been as impressed by a film since probably Into the Spiderverse about 5 years ago. Like, that surprised positively. Yeah, it just exceeded my expectations by 10 miles easily. Number 4, we have Oppenheimer. I could feel its length, but that is the only problem that I had with this film. Hans Zimmer's score is incredible, as you expect from him, and it perfectly presents Oppenheimer as like a tragic figure, and it carries the sensitivity it should for its topic. Honestly, when it comes to like a portrayal of like a historical figure, this is like what Napoleon probably wishes it was, because this is the only... From here on out, these are all 5 stars onwards. Yeah, this was just such a brilliant film, and honestly, the ending of it I thought was perfect, and it brings it back to the modern day perfectly, and it sums it up excellently. And yeah, I may never rewatch this film because of its fun and length or just anything else, but yeah, if there's one thing Barbie won over this, it is definitely rewatchability. I'd say that to compare the two of them, Oppenheimer is the best on the first watch, whereas Barbie is the more rewatchable out of the two. So if you want to think long term, then Barbie wins it, but this is just based on first watches, really. Number 3, we have Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse. Again, this is another 5-star earner, as Oppenheimer was. The opening of this thing was stellar, and as was the ending. The multiverse story is great, and it left me incredibly ready for Beyond the Spider-Verse. Like, I still remember, minor spoiler alert, but it is a cliffhanger ending. And literally, as soon as it came on, like, saying to be continued, I literally went impulsively, "Oh, what?" Because I was like that shocked, and I was just like, are you kidding me? Now I'm going to have to wait for the 3rd one. But yeah, honestly, a brilliant film. When I think about it, when I compare Into the Spider-Verse and this, I think Into the Spider-Verse wins it, but only just, and it is incredibly close, and both films do earn a 10 out of us. And this one, as I said, was just on the same scale practically. It's just that I did think Into the Spider-Verse was slightly better, but who knows, maybe it was just nostalgia coming in. But yeah. Number 2, we have John Wick Chapter 4. This is probably the best action film I've ever watched in my life, without a doubt. I cannot think of a single action film I've seen that has come even close to this. The choreography, the music, oh, honestly, it was such an experience, and this is one where I recommend that you use all of the sound facilities you've got available. For example, if you have like a sound bar or something like that, then just like use it and put it up to max. Honestly, you can thank me later for that. It was so good. And yeah, I remember there's like a bit with a car at the end and all that, and it just made us think back to like Disneyland, like that kind of level of choreography and planning from when I was at Disneyland in 2013 when I was just 8 years old. Like, it brought back such fond memories for me. And yeah, this is definitely one to watch as much as possible. It is incredibly rewatchable. I rewatched it with my dad a few weeks ago. Honestly, it hit the same the second time. And I think as well, part of the thing that helped it was the fact that the guy I went with, we went into it, because it had been out for a few weeks by the time I finally got around to seeing it. We went to see it in like a little sort of studio screen, as my cinema calls them, where it's like a bit smaller, and I think that helped for the sound aspect, because obviously the speakers are closer to you, so you feel it a bit more. But yeah, genuinely, definitely watch this, and it is, yeah, this is now my favourite out of the series so far. And number 1, we have Babylon. I know some people will disagree with me on this one, but please let me explain. This is the greatest film of the year in my opinion, and the reason being is simply because when it comes to cinema and what I say about makes films special in this art form. This film perfectly captures that, and it felt like you took my brain, my sort of speech about film and what I say about it when I tell people why I think it's so special, and just threw it into a film. And yeah, it is definitely one of my favourite films now. I have it on Blu-ray. It's not the most rewatchable because, you know, it is 3 hours long, but honestly, and it's the fact as well that it's not just that, it's also you have a great story with characters incredibly memorable. I can remember practically the entire film just up here without rewatching it for months on end, and it was so special. And honestly, Damien Chazelle, this is definitely your best film. Forget Whiplash, this is Damien Chazelle's best film. I'm sorry, but yeah, this is a perfect film. And honestly, yeah, there is not many films that come around like this where it encapsulates perfectly what is so special about cinema, and this one did it right, and I just had to give it 5 stars. It deserved nothing less. Honestly, just please watch this film if you can. You will love it, I promise you. If you are someone who loves film, you will love this, I promise you. Right, so with that is my 2023 film rankings locked in. Those are my opinions on all these films. I will put my Letterboxd link down in the description below, as well as the link to this list, so you can always read through it if you don't want to rewatch this video. Thank you for watching, and I would just like to say thank you all for this year as well on Big Dan's channel. I have loved making all these videos. The support I received from Moth was so good. I cannot thank you all enough. Genuinely, I've said before, this channel, the reason I always say we rather than I is because I want to feel like a collective. I don't want to say I'm the one who always owns it, because I love making videos for all of you. It is such a fun time to make all of these. I love you all. I love all of you. Thank you for the support you've shown me over this year. I could not appreciate it any more. I plan on still making more stuff, like not Moth, but like short films and stuff like that. Honestly, the support that got astounded me so much. Thank you all so much. And honestly, I hope all of you, from what the hours left of this year, that you have such a good time with them. And honestly, I cannot wait to start making even bigger and better content with you all in 2024. Thank you.